Welcome back to State of the Association. As always, I'm your host, Nash Roberts. We're not feeling the best today. We got a headache, so this episode ended up being a little bit shorter than I would prefer it to be. But we're going over 5 breakout candidates for the upcoming NBA season. Once I get a couple more podcast episodes out about NBA season previews, like I did the one about goals yesterday, I believe it was. So we're just going to keep doing more of those and eventually put them all together into a multi-hour NBA season preview. Thank you for tuning in. The first player I want to talk about over in Minnesota, we have Jaden McDaniels. He's been an elite defense player for a couple of years now, but with the loss of Karl-Anthony Towns, I truly believe that he will be able to take more of an offensive lead this season. And Minnesota, the Timberwolves fans, we've said for a while now that Jaden McDaniels, this is the year that he's going to take an offensive lead. And it hasn't really happened yet. I was that way last year. And to this point, he really hasn't. On the offensive end, he's kind of stagnated a little bit. But his defense has been so good, obviously, it makes up for it. But I think the loss of Cat, even though Julius Randle is another offensive-minded guy in the front court, I do think the loss of Cat is going to open up opportunities for Jaden McDaniels for sure. Now, if the Wolves didn't get back Julius Randle in the trade, I would argue Naz Reid would be a real breakout candidate for them. But since they got Julius, we're not going to slot in Naz Reid to the starting lineup barring injury, and he's going to stay in the six-man role. So really, I want to focus on Jaden McDaniels. And him, Naz Reid, and Anthony Edwards, I truly believe are the foundational pieces for the Minnesota Timberwolves moving forward. They're very good players right now, and I think that's the big three to build around over in Minnesota. I think coach knows that. I think fans of the team know that. I think even the owner really knows it. He re-signs these guys, values them a lot. We traded away Cat to make more money and allow us to keep that roster flexibility. So I think we're going to put more trust in Jaden McDaniels this year. Julius Randle can kind of take a little bit of a step down. Is he going to be a higher scoring option than Jaden McDaniels? Of course. But we'll allow Julius Randle to kind of take a little bit of a step down and sink into more of a supporting role. And Jaden McDaniels gets a couple more shots up a game. And his efficiency has been really solid. So it's really just about him taking more shots, getting more opportunities. And I think this is finally the year for that. And we've seen Jaden McDaniels, he made it into his first all-defensive team this past season. He's obviously an elite defender, one of the best perimeter defenders in the entire league. And we've got a good perimeter defense in general. So he doesn't even have to be, if you want just an offensive focus, season from him, and really that's not what you want, but if you want him to take a little more shots on offense, have a little bit more of a role there, and you worry that is going to hurt his defense, that's okay, because we've got other guys behind him, Anthony Edwards and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, to name a few, obviously Rudy Gobert in the post. You've got guys that can kind of make up for Jaden if he's not having the best game defensively, and in the event that you just kind of want to let him develop his offensive game a little bit more. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for Jaden this upcoming season, and he's a breakout player to watch for sure. Cole Anthony of the Orlando Magic. I've been very high on Cole ever since his rookie year for his potential as a really exciting scoring guard in the league. And during his sophomore season a couple years back, we kind of saw that at the start of the year at least. There was a time where he was averaging 20 points a night. And ultimately that Markelle Fultz came back into the lineup, and Cole's production suffered a lot. His minutes dropped. And ultimately it didn't end up being a super complete season for him. And the biggest knock on him at that time was just that his efficiency wasn't there. Because if you're going to be this offensive-minded guy who isn't the best defender, if you're an offensive scoring point guard, you need to be efficient while you're doing it, or otherwise you're a net negative on the court. And over the past couple of years, and especially this past year, Cole Anthony's efficiency has improved, which I think is probably the biggest key to unlocking his full potential, because, you see high volume scorers. A high volume scorer who isn't very efficient is a very, very replaceable archetype in this league. You see it especially with scoring wings, right? Zach LaVine, those kinds of guys aren't valued too high despite their individual talent. But if you are able to be more efficient, then you're able to impact winning basketball, even if most of what you bring to the game is just your scoring. Because a guy like Zach LaVine or Cam Thomas, I think, is a really good example. Cam hasn't been particularly efficient, and what all he brings to the team is his scoring. So if he's not doing that efficiently, he's not being that positive in terms of offensive contributions. But Cole Anthony, he's become more efficient in the past couple of years, so I think that is really huge in overall impact on the game, and that's going to lead to more minutes and more trust from the coach, and it's just great all around for Cole Anthony. One other thing that I think can really unlock his potential is the loss of Markelle Fultz, because the Magic, they had a lot of guards on the roster, a lot of talented guards on the roster. Cole Anthony, Markelle Fultz, Jalen Suggs, and they drafted some too in the previous draft, and so it's hard to find room for every single person on there. And who's going to start every night? Who's going to come off the bench? So now that Markelle's out of town, you can kind of have more solidified roster spots. You can say, hey, we're going to put Cole Anthony at the 1, Jalen Suggs at the 2, Franz at the 3, Paul at power forward, and Wendell Carter at center. And that's a pretty good lineup, and you don't have to worry about where you slot in Markelle there, because Cole Anthony, he was kind of getting put on the bench to go get buckets for the second unit, because his skill set is more acquainted to that, as opposed to Markelle was a better fit for the starting lineup in terms of his playmaking, for sure. Next to guys like Paolo Banchero, you want to set him up. But Cole Anthony has also become more of a solid playmaker in terms of limiting his turnovers. And just as time goes on, he develops more experience and becomes a better player and a more solid overall player. So I think now at this point, where you don't have to worry about Markelle Fultz and where you have a more efficient Cole Anthony, it's really a prime season for him to break out, especially when you've got a guy like Paolo Banchero or Franz that is going to be able to take away defensive attention from him. Defense is going to key in on the newly found all-star Paolo Banchero, or a guy who a lot of teams, a really, really solid forward next to Paolo and Franz Wagner, teams are going to key in on that when they're on defense, and it leaves a lot more space open for Cole Anthony, especially with Paolo's drives to the basket. So I think that overall, Cole Anthony's in prime position. I've actually got two players, and those are Christian Braun and Peyton Watson for the Denver Nuggets. I mentioned in my segment about team goals for each NBA team that the Denver Nuggets are going to need someone to step up in the absence of KCP. While KCP, didn't bring everything to the table, master of nothing, he was a jack of all trades. And so just to have an elite role player, well, he was the perfect fit for that roster. So the absence of him will very, very much be felt. And that's where Christian Braun and Peyton Watson have to step in as wings that are going to have to do a little bit of everything. They're going to have to defend. They're going to have to play make. They're going to have to score efficiently. And I think both those guys are very, very capable of doing that, and they've seen the opportunity. I think that they were some of the best non-starting five players of the Denver Nuggets. And it's really not close. And so now they'll get more opportunities to start, to get more minutes. And with that, I think they will thrive, because these are two guys that I believe have a ton of potential. I think Christian Braun and Peyton Watson has been in the league really for 7 years by now, or he's entering year 7. But, generally you don't think of a veteran as a main candidate to break out. But this guy just hasn't really had the opportunity. And last year he kind of flamed out. But prior to that, he had been really, really solid when he had been given an expanded role. And that is Shake Milton of the Brooklyn Nets. First of all, this guy is a lights-out shooter. And in the modern NBA, that is a very, very valuable attribute. In fact, it might just be the most valuable attribute. You have to be able to shoot, especially as a guard in this league. And as a scoring guard, which is what Shake Milton most brings to the table. Now, not last year, but in the years past, when either James Harden or Tyrese Maxey would be unavailable and Shake Milton would come in, he was really good. There was a time where he was averaging 20 when he was given the opportunity. And so Shake Milton is a really, really high potential player in terms of a scoring guard when he's given the opportunity. And last year in Minnesota, he didn't have a good year whatsoever. But he was also dealing with inconsistent minutes and just a general lack of playing time, and there's reasons for that, of course. But in general, when Shake Milton is able to get on the court and when he has an expanded role, he can be really good, and he's an efficient shooter as well. And my main point for this now is that he's on the Brooklyn Nets, and that is a team that can use all the help they can get, and especially a scoring guard. This is a team with just a lot of role players. And say what you want about those role players, none of them are truly going to be able to step up and be the number one scoring option. Cam Thomas is the closest you got to that. He's not super efficient. Dennis Schroeder, at this point, he's not going to take a major leap. So they really need someone to step up and be that scoring option that can be efficient as well, because Cam Thomas, he's going to put his shots up, but how many is he going to make per night? And so I think Shake Milton is going to be able to really step in. And is he going to set the world on fire? No. But I think after this past year in Minnesota, he was kind of on a downward trajectory. But I believe that in this new role for the Brooklyn Nets, he can really show up and shine. And maybe it's just 12 points a night, but with this, he can prove that he can be a valuable scorer, whether it's off the bench or coming in as a starter at some points. I think Shake Milton has potential to reinvent himself and be a good scoring guard in this league once again. And not just be a good scoring guard in this league once again, but reach new heights. Player I want to talk about is Mark Williams for the Charlotte Hornets. Now, I think the general public, or at least the people that are pretty tuned into the NBA, have known over Mark Williams' first 2 seasons in the league that he is a really, really solid center. But the issue with Mark Williams has been that he hasn't been able to stay healthy. That has by far been the biggest issue when it comes to Mark Williams. But I believe that if he is able to stay healthy, he's set to take a leap in year 3. Especially, say what you want about LaMelo Ball. He is a good playmaker and he can set up others. So, that point guard center combo, that can be really beneficial for Mark Williams. And having a guy like Brandon Miller there as well. Miller can take some of that defensive attention away from Mark Williams as well. So that opens up more opportunities for Williams to get to the rim and do his thing when he is asked to. So if he's able to stay healthy, I think Mark Williams could be in for a really good year. And that's been the issue, and I can't guarantee health. But in general, I think the way that this team is set up, Mark Williams is going to be able to have a really good year if he's able to stay healthy. State of the Association. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Nash Roberts, and we will be back soon.